How a Romance Novel Saved the Galaxy by Ariana de Rolte. Chapter 60. Concordia 1.
"This is going to be a nightmare assault, Bo,"
said Django. All the despair he hid from their Verde, under the impression of a confident, capable leader, was now present. Jaster squeezed his shoulder in acknowledgement. They were both staring at a schematic of a random deep Beskar mine on Concordia while their ship orbited said moon. A mine like this was not typically a good place to hide a large group of people. While an active mine had two exits, one to the factory and one through the pit, an abandoned mine only had the lift shaft which ran through the rightmost side of the mining operation below the factory. It was a death trap to put yourself in a location which only had one exit and which had an easily accessible shaft to drop explosives down. Else even bombing the surface would most likely collapse the mine and any hope of survival for those within. But Deathwatch held the advantage here for one simple reason. They had multiple hostages in the form of the stolen Ade. Any assault method the true Mandalorians chose would have to take into account that those Shabure had dozens, if not hundreds, of children who they were trying to rescue without harm. And that wasn't even mentioning that some of the older, more indoctrinated children might be fighting on Deathwatch's side. Torre Vizsla was not above pushing fresh teenagers onto the front lines to slow down his enemies. It was also likely that Deathwatch had heavily altered the inside of the mine since they weren't exactly a nice place for humans to live. The lower levels were almost always mined by droids, so despite having schematics, they were going into a tight, unknown area set up by their enemy who loved to bring explosives and traps, who held an unknown number of children hostage, and who was going to know they were coming considering the size of the task force orbiting Concordia. Jester sighed.
"We do have a number of Jedi with us,"
he said, trying to be a little optimistic. Masters Plo and Faye had reported that up close, they could focus through the Beskar-laden soils. It had been explained to Jaster as them essentially needing to know where to aim their attention. Master Yaddle had also admitted to having ample experience using the Force underground in confined spaces, a statement which had sent Windu grimacing for some reason.
"We're going to have to send them in first or at the same time as a distraction to see if they can get the Ade out. Those fire doors worry me,"
said Django.
"Yes."
They worried Jaster as well. They were essentially the same as the thick doors of a ship and meant to isolate areas in case of fire. If Tor dropped them, or even kept them regularly closed, each door would slow down their assault while either a Jedi cut through or their Verde bombed their way through, a risky prospect in an abandoned mine. The only good thing about them is they weren't Beskar, since no one would waste the precious metal on fire doors in a mine.
"We do have the vents,"
suggested Jaster. Despite only having droids in the lower levels, regulations made sure there was always a source of oxygen to all the mining levels in an active mine. The 1 to 3 vents in a typical mine tended to have large shafts which some of the smaller Verde and Yaddle might fit down. And even if they were too narrow, on whichever mine, now down to 4, was determined to be the Deathwatch base, they were still a point of vulnerability.
"Anything we drop down them has to take out Deathwatch, but not harm the Ade, but..."
Django didn't sound optimistic.
"And that's if they don't just put the boucher on and set the seals."
And if they simply dropped smoke grenades to limit visibility, the heads-up displays in your average Mandalorian boucher would make the disadvantage trivial. Life was so much easier when Jaster could send his super commandos up against non-Mandalorians. Enough of this bothering and despair. They were Mandalorians, and they'd faced worse.
"We have very little tactical advantage, so it's the psychological battle that we'll have to win here,"
said Jaster decisively.
"Vizsla is a coward, but he teaches his people our ancient culture. He also loves to cause pain. We need to trap him into a confrontation that gives him the opportunity to wreak the havoc he loves, and calls him out on his cowardice in front of his people, so he doesn't run like he always does."
Vizsla was, from captured Deathwatch texts, a fan of the Dahwer de Verda, an epic poem and war chant about the Tong, the original Mandalorians. Jaster could use this. Jaster could use that.
"So basically set up a whole drama competition."
Django sounded a bit doubtful. Jaster grinned. More one right out of a romance novel. Several hours before, Obi-Wan woke up with a view of the bottom of a mental bunk. He lay still, feeling the remnants of the drugs make his stomach churn. He kept his eyes closed and tried not to throw up. There would be nothing but bile, considering he only had that awful-tasting insect for food these past few days. Through the force, he could sense there were several beings around him in varying states of anxiety and pain. Beyond that, the force was weirdly muffled. He couldn't help the hand that crept up to check there was no collar around his neck. "They're up!" said a voice. Obi-Wan pushed down the last of his nausea before attempting to sit up. He was clutching the hard edge of the bunk like a lifeline. There were 5 other teens in the crowded room with him. The stone walls had 4 bunks on either side with an open-air fresher at the far end and nothing else, not even a window. Obi-Wan would say he was one of the youngest there. The teens around him ranged from 13 to 16 or 17. Each of them was dressed in a gray kute, the body sleeve worn under Mandalorian armor. Obi-Wan had to push down another bout of nausea at the thought that someone had undressed him and put him in the kute.
"Where am I?"
he asked. "I'm Corinth. He, him," said the oldest. They had extremely pale skin and hooded angular eyes. "And you're on Concordia. This is our squad." They pointed at a younger teen with the blue skin and pink hair of a Pantoran. "She's Balia. Next to her is Zer. He's twins with his sister, Yora. And near the fresher is Maru. He's actually the oldest of us." The blonde looked closer to Obi-Wan's age. "But I'm the leader. You got a name and a pronoun?"
"Obi-Wan, he, him. Why are we a squad?"
Corinth looked grim. There was the dark shadow of a bruise on his jaw. "You're a member of Death Watch now.